Okay, welcome, welcome. I think we'll go ahead and get started. We still have people joining. Just a couple of notes before we get started. If everyone could please mute themselves, that would be awesome, just so we can hear our fabulous speakers. I am recording the meeting and I will be sharing it afterwards. The other thing is if you didn't, I know we had a little bit of a couple different ways we started planning this meeting. So if you didn't sign up for today and you would like to receive follow-up materials from the colleges and universities on the call, there's a form in the chat and you can fill that out. And if you say yes, I'll be sharing a list of attendees and emails. Um, the other thing is we had a record number of questions come in for today. So, we won't, but we're going to get to as many as we possibly can. I'll mention this later. I tried to categorize and combine as much as I could just for efficiency purposes. And I hope we'll get to as many, as many of those as possible. I've also looped some into the presentation. And I also want to thank, before we get started, Genevieve Morgan, the fabulous Genevieve Morgan, who has been amazingly helpful to me, and I really appreciate it. So, and the amazing four admissions officers who you're about to hear from. They have some incredible information to share. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, please mute if you haven't. And I've disabled the waiting room so everyone can join when they can. If everyone could please mute. I hear a little background noise. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm your moderator today. I'm Amy Smith. I love being involved in HECA. Just very quickly, my background is I went to Northwestern, studied traditional journalism. I ran my own PR firm for many years. I had a passion project, the Mom Teeny Lounge. I was blogging about motherhood. And about 11 years ago, when my oldest son got into the college admissions process, I realized that college admissions is basically being a journalist and great storyteller and also a PR agent being able to brag about yourself in a competitive space. My kids are at the bottom of the screen. They went to Vanderbilt, Duke, and the University of South Carolina. Love to kind of show pictures of them and all the different paths they took. And because I asked our panelists today to share a fun fact, I'm sharing one of my fun facts, and that's on the right. When I was about 17 years old, junior in high school myself, I actually wrote an article about wacky things students were doing to catch the eye of admissions officers. So I love to share that because that article had a very pivotal role in my life in many ways, clearly to this very day. So here's what you can expect during this next hour. We're going to do our best to wrap it at the hour. If we go a little bit over, the panelists have said they would do that, but I'm really going to try to cram as much into this as I can. We're going to really focus where words matter on applications, specifically the activity list, main essay, and supplements. And we will touch briefly on AI. So let's go ahead and meet your panelists. I'm going to ask them to each introduce themselves briefly with one of two things, either the most surprising thing they've learned working in admission or their favorite part of their job. And I'm going to do that by showing you their fun facts that they shared with you. So Mari, will you kick us off?
Hi everyone. Thanks for being here today in
They've
beautiful upstate New York. It is
Okay.
like 95 degrees. So normally I say that it's cold up here, but it's not today. My name is Mari Mutz. I'm one of the Associate Deans of Admission at Colgate University in Hamilton, New York. I serve as our coordinator for all recruitment domestically and internationally, and our entire international application and admission process as well. I've been in higher ed for about 13 years now and actually started on the high school side. And I still think my favorite thing about my job is meeting students in their environments and then watching them come to our environment, and kind of seeing the juxtaposition of how they interact with us in both situations. So here are all of our Colgate fun facts. It was hard to choose just five of them, but there they are.
Do you have a favorite?
My favorite really is like we really play off of our lucky number being 13. Um, the president of the university worked with the state of New York a few years ago to get all of the speed limits on our campus changed to 13 miles per hour, which is a very large undertaking. And so when you come on campus, the speed limit is technically 13 miles per hour. Because we're just like a little crazy. We release decisions as much as we can at like 7:13 p.m., which is really fun for the people that get in, and the other ones hate the number 13 even more. But we really play off of it a lot, and everything we do is in 13s.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Brian.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome again. We're excited for you to be here. My name is Brian Rothstein. I serve as Director of External Relations, which is a fancy way of saying I am the one that works with all of you, our school counselor, our independent counselor, transfer counselor communities. And then in addition to that, I also recruit from three of the five boroughs of New York City. So I wear many hats in our office, but I'm excited to be here today. I work in admission for about 15, almost 16 years now at this point at a multitude of different institutions, size-wise and location-wise as well. But I'm here at Hofstra and love every minute of it. There are some fun facts on our screen here, as you can see, about Hofstra and who we are, and different things along those lines. But I would say really a couple of my favorite things in admission is, starting my career, I actually worked in an elementary school for a aftercare program, after school teaching elementary school kids and working with them through homework. And one of the students who was in first grade when I met her actually is a graduate student here at Hofstra, and we rekindled our friendship and our connection as she was looking at colleges. And I have watched her walk across the stage now twice, only a couple weeks ago, with her master's degree. So it was a really interesting piece. When I met her, the backpack was bigger than she was, so it was really fun to see that happen. That's actually not the first time. It's actually almost the fifth, sixth, or seventh time now at this point I've seen that
Mm,
happen. So working with students and seeing that happen over the years is such an awesome experience. And as Mara said, it is awesome to be able to work with students and continue to see their success overall. Hofstra is a fun place. There are some cool items here on our screen, and happy to connect with you and learn more together.
thank you. Thank you. Kuka.
Morning from the West Coast. Good afternoon to the East Coast. I'm Cuca Acosta. I'm the Executive Director of Admissions at UC Santa Barbara. I am so blessed to be at UCSB celebrating my 24th year at the university. That does not include my undergraduate experience. I have the privilege of being part of the undergraduate admissions office, of which there's about 23,000 undergrads on our campus, less than 3,000 graduate students on our campus. So that's one of our fun facts is we're predominantly undergraduate focused. As you hopefully know, the University of California is a system, and UC Santa Barbara is the middle child in that system. So yay to all the middle children out there because we're fabulous. For UCSB, I like to brag that the picture is our campus. So 2 miles of beach that surround the university. Five of our nine undergraduate residence halls are oceanfront property. Not
Wow.
as fun during hot seasons, and that most of our buildings, almost all of our buildings, have no air conditioning, but you just open your, bedroom window and the cool breeze comes in to cool you off. So one of those fun things for you to do. I will say that for us, the University of California, Santa Barbara campus, it is a single UC application. So I'll point out that the fun fact is that we had a record-breaking 110,000 freshman applications to UC Santa Barbara that we had to read and review and make decisions on within the course of 3.5 months. So another fun fact, we are looking actively for our external readers, and our webpage is open. And yes, I know you've heard this before. No, I've applied in the past, and as a independent, I don't always get selected. We are reviewing all candidates with equal love and measure. So I'll throw that out there if you're looking at our
Oh, it
webpage for
doesn't? Oh,
counselors
okay.
to be able to go through and decide how you want to
Oh,
spend
I
your
got you.
winter and if that
I'll
might
read
be
it
reading
there.
applications for UC Santa Barbara. All right, and I'll turn it back over to Amy.
Awesome. Awesome. If everyone, all the HECA members could please mute, it would be awesome so we can hear trying to do it, but that'd be great. Okay, Michaela.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Michaela Ridley. I use she and her pronouns. I'm one of our senior assistant directors in undergrad admissions at Binghamton. I am coming up on my 7-year mark in August. So, been here for a while. I love the school. It is a fantastic school to recruit for because I feel like I don't even really have to recruit. Just telling people about Binghamton tends to get our students excited about Binghamton. My favorite part of my job by far is actually this kind of stuff, whether it is big presentations and group meetings like this or one-on-one. I really like working with students and families and counselors. I think students working with them is my favorite part in really helping students to understand this process. I think there's oftentimes a belief that admissions counselors are like car salesmen and like we're trying to get you to pick our school. That is not the case. We do not work on commission. None of us do. We are very much just two different sides of the desk, both your counselors on the high school side and us on the admission side. We're just trying to help you make the best decision for your future. So I love having those conversations with students because it's just fun to help students make that first big decision of your adult life. I've got some fun facts about Binghamton up here. Other people had even more fun. There were other facts that I should have put on here. I did more
Give
like
us another one. If they can read this, if you want to jump in with a different one, that's fine.
Our campus is shaped like a brain, which is really cool. That is one of my favorite fun facts. But also our mascot is Baxter the Bearcat, and bearcats, they're very funny looking animals. If you've never seen a bearcat, you should definitely Google what a bearcat looks like because they kind of look like a mouse koala cat combo thing. They're very funny looking creatures. But bearcats, fun fact, smell like popcorn.
Wow.
Don't know why, but for some reason, bearcats smell like popcorn. Also, Flo from Progressive graduated from Binghamton. Flo from the Progressive commercials. Big Binghamton theater major grad.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the different writing sections. We're going to first talk about activity lists, and we'll just kind of go left to right with our counselors. And if you could share with the group your really top tips, best practices for students, especially when there's so little space to use. And then I throw in, if you don't mind, resumes, yes or no, because that was a big question that came through. Brian, will you kick us off?
Sure, absolutely. I always say to students, we love to know, I am sure my colleagues will share items like this as well. But, I always say to students, it's imperative for us to know what they're doing outside the classroom, right? We know what they're doing inside the classroom because we get to see their high school transcript. So I always say to them, I need to know what the items are outside the classroom. So I encourage the resume or activities list. So to answer that question, I tell them either one. Many of them will upload a resume. It is fine. We will look at it and we will look at it in tandem with an activities list. Sometimes what we've seen over the last couple of years is a lot of students are using the activity list to tell us what it is and then use a resume for a little bit more of the explanation behind what they are involved in outside. What I usually say to students if they're using just an activities list, especially on the Common App, because again, there is short space as we all know, to really briefly describe it as best they can, what they're involved in, what they're doing, their research, if they're working somewhere, and the other thing that we, I think, do really well now and really highlight a lot with students is the importance of everything is important. And what I mean by that is I cannot tell you how often I hear from students and families that they think picking up a younger sibling after school and taking them home to do homework with them is not something they should be putting on their resume or activity sheet. And it is, right? Because it showcases to us in the world of admission responsibility, character building, different things along those lines as well. So I think very often students discredit themselves because they want to be the top of the top, which totally understand that. However, we also want to make sure that they have the opportunity to be able to share everything with us.
Okay, great tips. And the Common App just added this new checklist this year with family responsibilities, which, yeah.
They did. And I was very happy to see that because I think it's something a lot of students are reluctant to share, but I think it's an important piece.
Okay, thank you. HECA.
The University of California, as you know, has a single UC application that includes an activity and awards section. So I remind everyone that there's up to 20 entries that can be placed there, and duplication is a no-no. That's my first tip. So if I tell you I'm a Girl Scout in the extracurriculars, I don't have to repeat that I'm a Girl Scout under volunteer work. So one and done. Second thing is in the description piece, we do not need full sentences. I know that sounds counterproductive. It's clarity, depth of knowledge, and context. So it's not what is volleyball, but what did I do on the volleyball team? Was it high school? Was it club? I think that's the best thing I can do. Clear, concise, and factual about what the student gained from the experience is more relevant than trying to describe the idea of I did this summer camp where there were 7 7 trees all lined up. As and I walked by every tree, I had a moment of clarity that life was great. It's not about that in the description of the activities and awards. It's context. I was one of 7 students selected out of my high school. Very different from I was one of 700 students selected out of the nation. And that puts context to the stranger, specifically the UCs, where we can't look anything up. We will not go offline. We will not allow resumes to be uploaded. There is no uploading process to the University of California application, and we don't allow for letters of recommendation. So it's the student's responsibility to add those descriptors into the activities and awards section.
Thank you. Michaela.
Yeah, I think both of those things are things that I would highlight before, like talking about your family responsibilities very much counts as an extracurricular. It doesn't have to be an organized club. Things you do outside school that matter to you are important. And yes, we do not need full sentences. The more efficient, the better. I would say we do not need resumes. Similar to the UC application, we have your activity information, your extracurricular information from your Common App or your Coalition App or your SUNY app, whichever one you filled out. There was an activity section, and we would rather get it that way because that's like formatted in the way that we know what we're looking for, because it's formatted in a specific standardized way. So for us, that's easier. It's never a bad thing to upload your resume. We just don't need it, and it tends to be just a repeat of what we already have from your application. The only other thing that I would say is if you can, or if you feel passionately about it, giving us some context of not just like what you did, like, I was on the volleyball team or something, but what made you interested in that? Because ultimately that's what we're looking for with the extracurriculars, is we're trying to figure out what you're passionate about, what gets you excited, what you're interested in. So if you can give context to why you got involved with that club or organization, that can be really helpful to us too.
Okay, great advice. And Mari.
The good thing about going last is everyone takes the good advice, and everything that was said is sort of what I was going to say. I think I'd only add 2 things. One is that no, we won't look at resumes that are uploaded separately. We just don't have the time in our process to do that and want to see students putting the time into their application. Students don't need to pay to do research. If research is something that they're interested in and they want to do it and have had opportunities to do it, that's fine. But we don't want students using precious funds of their family to be paying to do research somewhere, and adding that as just like a resume booster in a sense. If they want to be doing research and want to do it independently, we'd rather see them taking that on than paying to do it. The only other thing I would say that's sort of activity list, sort of essay, is that their essay should not be a reiteration of their activity list and vice versa. So there's very limited real estate in the application, as we all know. Everybody tries to crunch all of there's a lot of like words that we're trying to crunch together so we can make all the use of the space, but don't use the precious space of the essay or the supplemental components of it to reiterate within your activity list.
Okay, great advice from everybody. Thank you so much. Let's pivot to the main essay. And then obviously the UC has the PIQ, the PIQs. So let's go backwards actually. So Kuka, will you kick us off with the PIQs? I did copy them down here since you said it was the same for this year. I know you picked 4 of 8. The one question I want you to maybe answer as you're doing it, the last one, number 8, what makes you a strong candidate for admissions to the, if a student's applying to 5 UCs, that one's kind of hard to answer, right? So I would love for you to address that, but
Sure.
what
Sure.
tips do you have?
The directors of admission came together, they sat in a room and they created 8 questions. And they've been similar questions. We tweaked them slightly about 3 years ago. So they really shouldn't be a surprise as you're helping and advising students. I will point out that each question gets answered pretty equally when we look at our applicant pool across all of the UC campuses. There is no one question that is answered by everyone. So sharing that with your students is greatly appreciated. There really is an equal distribution across the board. We have the 8 different topics with purpose because someone will be really comfortable talking about their creativity and someone else will not. And so we really wanted that variety of topics. When it comes to question number 8, this is more or less a what did we not ask you question.
Mm.
right? What have we not heard? What makes you you? That is, in essence, question number 8. So as you're advising students, that would be fabulous to note that as they went through their application, what are they missing? So here's what I want you to know. The personal insight questions are purposely called questions and not essays, because we are not in the Office of Admissions here to evaluate their writing style. No, it sounds counterproductive. We're looking at an offer of admissions, and gosh, we should be looking at their writing ability. No, there is an English or a English writing proficiency exam that will place them into their appropriate freshman writing class. That will happen after the
Team,
fact. So when it comes to the Office of Admissions, we
wanna
are
come up?
here to understand more about the student. And so
Good
we'll start
job.
by looking at their academics, trying to get a grasp of, do they have everything in place? Was there anything there that needs to be explained? And then we can go to the PIQs for that. And there are different places where that information can come about in a PIQ. It might be an academic question, that question, right, that's talking about what's your favorite academic subject. It could be a challenge that happened that changed the grades. So realistically, the PIQs should do the same 3 things I talked about. Add clarity of knowledge. What do I need to know about the student? Add more depth, the details behind what they did, how they did it, what happened to them. In the details and the explanation, I will say that some of the best practice I can give you is to keep the examples relevant. Your student should not be focused on third grade and what happened in third grade and the life of a third grader, because if they peaked in third grade, we've got issues, right? Now, if something happened in third grade that reverberated and still continues in high school, help your student drag that experience and that response to be relevant to their high school. Last but not least, context is key. The stranger reading an application, as it comes to Santa Barbara, we don't read by territory. I'm not knowledgeable about what happens in your student's city, in your student's state. I don't understand all of the nuances of your student's high school. You do. You know those nuances. You've been talking to that student. You have a different perspective. The last thing I'll say before I turn it over to my colleagues is that when it comes to the PIQs, no, being campus specific is not helpful, because yes, they're only applying to Santa Barbara. Cool, awesome, fabulous. But we do not look at that student saying, I only want to be at UCSB. It is not part of our evaluation. And so removing that factor and allowing really the facts to come through. Why are you you? What have you done? That's going to be really helpful to your student. Again, we don't think of it as an essay, so grammar, spelling, that's not a review, but it does help to clarify, because I am a one and done girl. I will read the response once. So if I understood it, great. If I stop and go, I don't get it, I will not go back and read it again. And so the clarity of language, the understanding, the lack of metaphors, because I hate metaphors. I hate scene set. I say the word hate, and I'm in a group where I can say that. I hate scene setting. I hate quotes. I hate that moment of like trying to build up. I hate the hook. I don't need any of it. I have 7 sections of an application. I'm trying to get from section 1 to section 7 in less than 10 minutes because that's how many applications I have. So I need to be able to go, what was the point? So as you're helping your student edit, if you don't have highlights, this is a fact, this is a new fact that I didn't find anywhere else in the application, then it's just going to be a neutral. A PIQ can't hurt a student. I will say this fun story, and I apologize to my colleagues for going over, and that is, I did have a student who once said, I hate UCSB. I don't want to go to UCSB. My mom is forcing me to apply. And if you admit me, I will party and smoke and I will just totally be a terrible student. And that was a neutral. I couldn't use it against the student. It didn't help. It didn't hurt. It was just like, oh, well, that's good. And then move on. So I think the question of, is there something that a student shouldn't relate to us? The answer is no. They can tell us anything and everything, but it's either going to be a neutral or it will help fill in those blanks and give me that clarity, context, and that detail that will help me admit a student. And those are the PIQs.
Amazing advice. And I'm glad you added that at the end because I meant to add to my question to the and for the rest can answer this. If you have a favorite example, good or bad, definitely add that to your description. Mari.
So I we're like so opposite in so many ways because we at Colgate are do committee-based evaluation. So there's two people reading an application at one time. One person is always the regional dean, so always has the context of the school and the state and or the country that they're in, and the other person is a member of our staff, also trained in whatever in reading applications anyway. And we're always looking for context in the essay. We're always looking to find out a little bit more about who they are. I go back to this limited real estate space where we want to know who you are. And students always say, well, what's the key to getting in? And if there was one key to getting in, then all of our students would be the same and our campus would be a homogenous, boring place. And so we want all of our students to be very different. We're assessing students for who they are as a human being. We also want to see that they have the level of writing for a college student. We don't have the English placement classes or tests that students take. And so when we admit students into the university, we're assuring our professors that they can keep up with the level of liberal arts writing that is required across science classes, math classes, art classes, everything, computer science classes. And so I always say, just like, tell us about who you are. I want to know, I want to hear something authentic about who you are. I want to learn more about you. One of my favorite essays I've ever read was about a student from a country in Europe, and she talked the basis of her essay was a kitchen table. And that kitchen table was so essential to her family because it was her great grandmother's that was passed down to her grandmother, that was passed down to her mother, and would be passed down to her. And there were so many components of her culture that she learned through being at that kitchen table, whether it was pasta making or dessert making. And that kitchen table brought their family together so much. And so something seemingly so simple, a table, was the basis of this essay that really created something much larger that helped me kind of understand who she was, what her values were, and also showed me a little bit more about her creativity, her writing style, how she was able to kind of critically think in a different way. And I still remember that. That was one of the first essays I read when I actually got to Colgate. And she did come and has since graduated and is now working in the financial field, probably not writing about her kitchen table anymore, but it certainly helped her through here. And I just think that authenticity is the biggest key here. We can always tell when students are not being authentic, when they've not written it themselves, when they're trying to put on a show for someone. We don't need to hear about the game-winning goal that they scored. Congrats. That doesn't define you. We don't need to hear about your neighbor's aunt who passed away unless that was something that was directly impactful to you. So there's no sob stories we need. It can be something so small that really ignites who you are and tells us a little bit more about how you can contribute to a lively liberal arts campus community.
Amazing. Before we move to Michaela, Kuka, Lauren asked in the chat, did the smoker partier get in?
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, Michaela.
So I love talking about essays. I actually have an hour-long presentation that I do about essays every year for our students. So I could literally talk about this for an hour, if not longer. But I think some of the basic things that I like students to keep in mind as they are crafting their essay, I would say our process is probably somewhere between Colgate and the UC system of we only use your main Common App essay. We have no supplemental essays. And that does mean that it's closer to we're just trying to get to know you. We're just trying to get to know your personality, see what you're passionate about. We don't have like these specific targeted questions of tell us this, and therefore I'm looking for this exact piece of information. It is for us more about getting to know your personality and kind of getting to know your vibe and how you would fit into our community. There are definitely some topics, like you'll hear it all the time of like, don't talk about sports, just every essay about sports that could possibly have been written has been written. It's just not a great topic. Also, probably don't talk about somebody else who is awesome. A lot of people talk about their grandma and how amazing she was, or their dad and how amazing he is, which is great. Your dad's not coming to our school. We don't care that your dad is great. We want to know about you and how you would fit in on our campus. And I think a lot of people also default to this setting of like writing, basically putting your resume in an essay format, which is not nearly as helpful as telling us one specific story. The more unique you can make it to you, the more specific you can make it, the better, because we're trying to get to know who you are as a person. And I will also say, I'm sure like when students hear a conversation like this and they're like, I feel like every college is telling me to do something different, that can be stressful. You can, there is some extent to like learn what the colleges that you're applying to are looking for, and you might want to modify your application a little bit to match what those colleges are looking for. But also, just be yourself, and the colleges that you are a good fit for will see that you are a good fit for them. Like, don't try. It's good to know what the colleges are looking at, and to maybe slightly modify your application to show the specific things that you want to highlight for that school. But don't try and change your personality or change your style to match the college that you want to get into. If that is a good college for you, the way that you normally are, the authentic you is going to do well in their review process. So I feel like there's a balance of like know the colleges you're applying to, but don't get too in your head about exactly meeting exactly what this college is looking for. Just be yourself. It'll work better than you think it will. I really like essay writing. I think it's really fun to help students write their essays, come up with ideas. I have probably read thousands of essays over the years in admissions. And honestly, the thing, like, I oftentimes ask what my favorite essays were. And there were essays that I absolutely love. I can think of 10 or 15 essays that I absolutely loved. But I hesitate to summarize them because I'm like, I didn't love them because of the topic necessarily. So I don't want to say like, oh, I loved this essay. And people are like, cool, I'll write about that. That's what Binghamton likes. Michaela said she liked that. I liked the essays because they were well written. I liked them because I could see the personality and the passion of the student. It doesn't really matter what the topic of the essay is necessarily, as long as we're getting to know you and or for supplemental questions, getting the specific answers that we need to the question that we asked.
Okay, great advice. Brian.
I want to be mindful of our time, and we have a handful of more slides. I think everything that was said was really important and imperative. I'll tell you, here at Hofstra, we definitely read their students' essays. There are some schools that don't, and we are all in know of that, right? On any side of our desk. But I always tell the students this is one of the only things they still have full control over right now in their application process, and that's something that I really highlight back to them. If they didn't do math, and I will say this, and similarly to what Michaela had said, I will be transparent. I have an hour and a half session that I can do for essays as well, and have for students and for counselors and for teachers and so on and so forth. Same thing for letters of recommendation. But what I say to the students very often is that this is something you have control over. If you didn't do well in math freshman year of high school, that ship has sailed. You can't go back and bargain with a teacher, right? It's over and it's done, and the grades are what they are at this point. You have control over the grades currently senior year, but everything else is in the past, right? So that is what it is. But this is an opportunity for you to share something with us, and tell us a story, tell us information about you, tell us whatever it might be. And I encourage students to be mindful that this is authentic self, and this is a time to share it, because again, the other items other than their resume, there's really no control that they can really do at this point. So that would be my biggest kind of piece on the essay, is that I really reiterate that to students, and I'm sure all of you do as well. But I make sure that they hear that, and I've seen many of the head nods of students kind of say to themselves, yeah, you're right. That does make logical sense, because the grades are what they are and everything else is really are what they are at this point. You can't go out and find this awesome internship, or you can't go out and all of a sudden start volunteer work overnight and then be able to put out a resume. That doesn't happen either. So that'd be my piece here.
Okay, thank you. Great
Yeah.
advice. Okay, let's move on to supplements, and this will be a little quicker because not everyone on the call has supplements. So Brian, you have this optional Y Hofstra. You said totally optional, up to 500 words, no word count specified. My only question for you would be what percentage of applicants actually answer that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it went optional this year, so I don't have numbers on how many did or did not. I'll be super transparent though. I would say for the most part, students will write us something. I've seen students say, send us a whole 500-word essay. I've seen students send us a line and they said, I toured and it was beautiful. Sure, right? It is really okay. I had a student, this is one of my favorite ones. I had a student about a week ago who submitted a later application. They said, I didn't get into any school and I toured tours and it looked nice, so sounds good. and they are actually coming to orientation next week. So full circle moment, right? I had 3 lines of information of why they were interested, but it was helpful for us, right? There are also times where students will be like, my mom forced me, kind of like what Kuka said, it like my mom forced me to apply and not really interested, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, well, at least they were authentic, right? Some do, some don't. It's not going to deter us either direction. It's not going to help us with making an admission decision. It sometimes is a little bit of clarity purposes of kind of where, what, and who, and what drew them to us. If it's a specialty program and they didn't, like, there are times where students will indicate in that essay, if they're filling it out about a specialty program that they didn't apply to. So then it will kind of ring bells in our head and say, you didn't apply to this, or you thought you did and you didn't check it off, or you didn't submit something. So then we'll kind of go back to them. So it's kind of like almost like I call it like the making a list, checking it twice kind of thing. And that's kind of what we do with some of these pieces. So.
Okay. Kuka, I summarized what you told me. Do you want to add anything to that? Or since it's not all, it's not general, anything you want to add is fine before we move to Maury.
I'll just say that the University of California application, when your student clicks on the "This is my intended major," if a gray box appears for your student, there is a second step for them. If that is an audition, an interview, a supplemental essay, something else, then there is an action and a deadline by which that must be taken. That list of supplements is, I believe, on page 27 of the University of California Quick Reference Guide. Granted, that will be updated in August, but just as a reference point, as you're advising students, that supplemental list is there, and it's dependent usually on major to a given UC campus.
Okay, thank you. Mari does have supplements. They are not 100% confirmed for this cycle, but I did pop last year's on the screen. Mari, any tips here on this? I know we can't guarantee it'll be the same, but anything you want to add?
It's funny when people are like, it's the summer, we should probably have things ready for next cycle because the application is opening very soon. And then it's like I wish I could just like bring my computer to the hallway right now so you could see how many people are just like popping in and out of people's offices. Like, is this finalized? Is this finalized? It's like June 24th. And I remember the time in admission when it was like August 24th, and you were like, we should probably think about finalizing things. So things are happening earlier, but also slower. That's my way of saying I think these are mostly confirmed for this year. During the pandemic, we did go from offering supplements that were required to offering them as optional. And I will say, Amy, I'm sure you're going to ask the percentage of students that submit them. I don't have an exact percentage, but it is the majority of students that submit at least one of these. And we actually find that the number of students who enroll are the ones who are more likely to submit some of these. We don't use it as a gauge of understanding. We like check a box and move on and then read them. A lot of students like to answer prompt 3 back to our 13, lucky number 13. We have 13 fill in the blanks that you have to do 13 words or less. And so this kind of gives students the opportunity to show a little bit more creativity. And I always go back to the limited real estate component of this. There's very limited space to tell us about yourself. And this is a really good place to show us a little bit more about who you are. I learn about all sorts of people's favorite food. When we admit students, we send them their admission packet with what we call a signing note, and it's a little tidbit from their application that to show them that we've actually read it. And a lot of times we'll take prompts from here. So I learn a lot about people's favorite food and also their perspective. Yes, it is 13 words after the prompt. So you do get to fill in 13 words. That wouldn't be fair for us. That's a good question. I think the prompt 1 and 2, students put a lot of pressure on themselves to make it a super polished supplement. It's 250 words or less. It doesn't need to be a research paper. If students want to submit them, they can. We really don't care. They can submit all 3, any combination, or just one of them, whatever it is. But the most common one we see is prompt 3, just because it's a little more fun.
Okay, thank you. This is also kind of quick because I sort of did the work in advance for everyone with their responses. So this shows you honor scholars and merit aid. If anyone of the panelists wants to add anything, like if there's any deadline or if this is just kind of self-explanatory, feel free to jump in if there's anything I haven't covered.
Can I clarify?
Please.
We have a merit aid that we review, but there is no essay. So that was my point of
okay.
view. So I apologize for not putting
Sorry
that
about
clear.
No problem. No problem.
The only thing I'll add from the Hofstra perspective, which I think is kind of unique to us, is that we actually offer three different entry points to honors. They can either apply to honors, they
That
can
was
be
16.
automatically reviewed to honors, or they can be invited after their first year or their third semester, so their first semester sophomore year. So there are a handful of different entry points into our honors college, so it's kind of unique and different. And any class at Hofstra can be transformed into an honors level class as well. So again, something that's a little bit unique and different, but kind of cool and fun, based off of that.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. AI, we had a lot of questions about it, so I just want to briefly mention this. On the left, I'm showing actually an image I show students, especially when I do presentations. I want them to have this image in their brain that like a robot does not know your authentic stories. Don't use AI, don't use Chat GPT. And on the right is a blog post I wrote where a UPenn graduate, psychology graduate student did a study showing that admissions offices, like Kuka said, I think 110,000 applications, right? Like, how can you humanly read all these? That some colleges are leaning into using AI for a first read. So, if each of you could sort of talk about these two angles, first of all, what's your viewpoint on whether students should use artificial intelligence? Are you using AI detectors? And then are you yourselves using AI to do the read? So, if you could each kind of address that quickly, that would be great. Kuka,
I can,
or yeah, or Michaela. Michaela, go for it.
yeah, I was gonna say I can hop in first. So first of all, as far as whether students should use AI when creating their application, when writing their essays, I would strongly discourage that. Um, we get a lot of questions from students of like, can we tell? Like, if I do use AI, how would you even know? And the thing is, we can kind of tell, but admittedly, we can't always. The thing is, we can't tell the difference between AI and a boring essay. Can we tell the difference between AI and a good essay? Yes, absolutely. But no, admittedly, we can't tell the difference between AI and a kind of boring eh, essay. Because the thing is, what AI does is it takes hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of college essays that it found on the internet and it averaged them all together. It takes that overall format and it takes some of your information and it throws it in there and it goes, cool, here's a statistically average college essay that has your info in it. And that's just a really boring essay. It's grammatically fine. It's not going to hurt, but it's also not going to help you in any way because a robot wrote it and it's just sort of the generic format of an essay. A much better essay is always going to be one that you wrote with your authentic voice that actually makes logical sense. That's typically when we do see an essay and we're like, this looks like it's written by AI. It's grammatically fine, but it kind of is a story to nowhere. Like it technically has all the parts of an essay, but it just kind of feels off. So we think we can tell. We can't always tell the difference between AI and a crummy essay, but we can tell the difference between AI and a great essay. So if you're trying to write an essay that will make the difference and help like give you a leg up in the college application process, AI will not do that for you. We also currently do not use AI for any part of our review process. I can't say with confidence that that would never change. We have been seeing, when I started working here, we got about 35,000 applications a year. We now get over 60,000 applications a year. There is a possibility that we could shift to that in the future, but we don't really want to. We'd rather have more external readers. I mean, we're telling you not to use AI to create your application, so it doesn't fully seem fair for us to use AI to evaluate your application. So currently, that's not a part of our review process at all.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And there is a question in the chat if one of you want to answer that, but Brian?
Yeah, I would say, for similarly to what Michaela shared, nothing yet in regards to AI assisting with application review. Do I think it will happen at some point in time? 1052%. When? Not really sure. I think it's going to take over the world. Let's be real here. We're going to stop driving vehicles at some point in time. So I think it will do everything. Unfortunately for our students and ourselves at some point in time. In regards to students using AI, what I say to them very often, and I did see this happen and this is real. When they fill out the essay and they don't prompt at school, it will leave at the bottom, and I'm sure you've all seen this, like insert college name here in brackets, right? for our optional, and this ties back with your question about the optional essay before, I had a student write it. We're very closely in proximity and kind of overlap with St. John's University. And I had a student submit their why St. John's versus why Hofstra, and it had all the information, and I read through it, and I thought to myself, this sounds like our campus community, but not enough like our campus community. At the bottom, it said like insert college university name here. And when I actually put it back into ChatGPT, it shared with me that it was a written essay as to why someone should look at St. John's. So it is it is very inauthentic, as we probably all know. And it is a robot that's writing an essay, right? And sometimes it's too closely related, so we can absolutely tell. I can also tell because you sometimes you see different things and you see words that don't make logical sense that a student that wasn't scoring well in English would also come up with. And I think that ties in with the question of like, can we tell when it's a student and an essay writer? At times we can, or AI versus an essay writer. At times we can. If you actually, and I challenge you if you've not done this, you can actually ask ChatGPT, and there are many obviously AI services out there to make your whatever that comes up with be a little bit more humanistic, and it will actually transform what it says to make it sound more like a human, which is very interesting to do, and I encourage you to try to do that. But it is really interesting to see. So there are times when we can notice that when working with a college essay writer or an assistant in regards to that. Yeah, it is helpful for the students, but we can tell the difference between, or for the most part, can tell the difference between the two of them. In regards to like using AI and ChatGPT, when I say to students when they're like, "Oh, what if we use it?" I've encouraged them to think about it as almost like synonym.com, right? Sometimes you just can't think of the word you want to use, and describing it in ChatGPT might come up with the word, or a word choice, and you're kind of like, "Oh yeah," and I'll be transparent. I do that sometimes too, right? Like I'm a elongated speaker and an elongated essay writer, or email writer, and I'm sometimes like, yeah, this needs to be 3 sentences, not 8. How can we do this? So it will truncate some of my information. I'm like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. And that's what we're saying to students, right? Like use it to truncate some of your ideas that you can't figure out, but it doesn't mean toss your whole essay in it. But a couple sentences to make it into one sentence, or a couple sentences to find the word choice of what you're trying to say, definitely is, it could be helpful for them, but not the whole essay.
Okay, great advice. Mari?
I think the advice has been given. I think the only thing I'll say is that we don't use AI detection. We've explored opportunities to actually use it to improve our process. And spoiler alert, we're still smarter than AI at this point. So AI cannot calculate a GPA for us, but we can calculate a GPA. So that's the only way that we would use it. I don't have anything else to add. I think what Michaela and Brian said were great pieces of advice.
Awesome. Thank you. And Kuka, anything to
Sure.
add?
The University of California does review for plagiarism all personal insight questions for our applicants. So I think that's where we use AI the most in terms of did this student copy and paste from a former applicant or grab something offline? So I hope that you can make sure that your students are actually writing their own responses. When it comes to evaluating a personal insight question, no, it's a human who goes through and reads it. Remember, one and done. I'm going through and I'm reading it once and then I'm moving on. And so it's important that a student recognize it is a person, which is why we really don't want students to use slang or other those fun, acronyms, because some of us are old and we don't get what a 17-year-old means anymore. I will point out that in terms of using ChatGPT or any AI tool, I'm not dumb. I know it's being used. And if it's being used in order to kickstart an idea because I don't know where to start, or Brian, brilliant. Yes, this is 400 words, and the University of California only requires or won't only allow 350. Help me condense this to make it clear and concise. Totally okay to help with that. But that's also probably why you're around. Is it not? You're there just to be their chat GPT or their AI tool. So I recognize it because we're not using style or structure in our review process. It is less relevant for us to sort of be so strict on the idea of like, you can use it to get started, you can use it to edit, you can use it to spell check. That's fine. It is what it is. I'm not going to penalize a student for that, but I will for plagiarism.
Okay.
I say that out loud. I underline it. I put an exclamation point at the end.
Do you see that a lot each year, Kuka?
It's been something that we evaluate and that we see each year, several hundred students. And so for us, those students, when we catch them plagiarizing, we will ask them to clarify what happened. And if that clarification is not something that we can stand behind, they are canceled at every UC campus they applied to.
Okay, awesome. Okay, let's get to the questions because so many people submitted questions in advance. I'd like to start with these just with time purposes. And I did categorize these and combine just for time purposes. So, um, why don't we let's go through, why don't you guys each just take like two, quickly answer, and then like I told you, I told the admissions officers before the call, if someone answers something and they feel a burning need to add something, they will. Otherwise, we're going to kind of just cover as much as we possibly can. So, um, Michaela, why don't you kick us off and just pick any two, answer them, and then we'll move through.
Pick any two. Okay, let's see
Yeah.
here.
User's choice.
Let's see here. What high impact common mistakes do you see that you wish you had a Super Bowl ad to inform everyone at once about? Proofreading is definitely the most important thing, whether that is in your application or in the emails that you send to the school. Brian was kind of talking about something similar, but when we get emails that are like, I am so excited, I love your school so much, it has always been my dream to come to Stony Brook University, and we're like, wrong SUNY. Oopsies. Make sure that you are reading the things that you send to colleges and that you are talking about the right college and that you are looking over the emails, the essays, all of that. Also, maybe have a professional email address that is just like your name and a random number or your birth date or something that is not the email address that you got when you were 10 years old and isn't really professional anymore. Maybe have just a standard professional email address that you use to communicate with colleges. So I think that's kind of my biggest, like, think about the things that you are presenting to a college and the fact that we are looking at anything that you send us. Make sure that you're double checking your work.
You want to pick a
Let's see here. What? How do students with a background that has impacted them, like race or their queerness, now communicate that or not on their application? This is such a good question. So I'm sure I can tell from the person that wrote this question that you are worried because of the fact that the Supreme Court has made some very incorrect decisions in recent years and has put some very strong limits on what colleges are allowed to look at and care about. Because the fact is, the context that you grew up in does matter. It has impacted your entire life. It is relevant to the student that you are and the person you would be on our campus. And we do care about that. The thing that the Supreme Court basically said we are not allowed to do, which is fair, is we are not allowed to just take a checkbox and use that to determine who you are as a person, which, fine. That's not what we were really supposed to be doing anyway. Any college that was doing their job prior to these Supreme Court decisions was not using checkbox information anyway. They were trying to look at the students in the full context of their application, their background, their experiences. You are still allowed to tell us about any part of your identity that is important and personal to you and that you think has impacted your academic experience, that you want colleges to know about. You are still allowed to put that in your essay if you want to. You're still allowed to put that in your additional information section. You're allowed to tell us anything you want to tell us. The thing that colleges aren't allowed to do is just take it as a checkbox piece of information and use that to make their decisions, which again, they weren't supposed to be doing in the first place. That wasn't the original purpose of any of the affirmative action policies that colleges had in place prior to the Supreme Court decisions. So you are still free to tell us your story. You should never feel like I am not allowed to share this. There might be things where colleges go, yeah, you shared this and we're not allowed to take this into account in quite this way, or we're not allowed to use just this information. We need additional context here. But there's never a circumstance where you're not allowed to tell us and you're not allowed to share your story. You are absolutely allowed to do that, and to the best of our ability, while also following the law, regardless of personal feelings that some of us may have about the law. We do have to follow the law, and we do. But you're still allowed to tell us your story, and we will do everything we can to understand you in the context of everything that happened to you for the 18 years prior to your application landing on our desk.
Okay, great advice. And Michaela, the Common App claims that race is suppressed information.
It is.
It's part of their
It is. So
Okay.
that checkbox information we do not see.
Right. Okay.
We do
So
not have access. There used to be a section on the Common App that would
Right.
tell us the checkbox information, your race and your ethnicity, and we just don't see that
Yep.
anymore. It's like your social security number.
Yeah.
You add your social security number on the Common App, we can't see that. It's one of those things that's just hidden now.
Absolutely.
So
Okay.
if you do want to tell us that, the checkbox information is not helpful because we do not see that at all. If you do want to tell us that, it should come in your application essay or the additional information
Gotcha.
section.
Gotcha. Okay. Brian, 1, 3, and 5 are left. Pick 2.
Sorry, I was totally answering someone's in the chat. Given I'm gonna definitely answer number 1. Given how little time admission officers spend reviewing each application, how can students really stand out and get them to pay attention in a good way? Definitely resume activity sheet. We've covered that. I think that's a really good way. And I think essays being unique, different. I tell students my 3 words I always use is be innovative, creative, and different, and make themselves stand out. You know, filling out the information on your like personal information on the Common App on the application in general, there's nothing you can make stand out in regards to that, right? In regards to like classes and stuff like that, we like to see they're taking a rigorous curriculum, so that's helpful. But again, if you're taking your curriculum, you can't change it at that point. So I would say standout piece of it is resume activity sheet, and definitely the essay. I also tell students the letters of recommendation are helpful, and they should come from a multitude of people if a school does require to submit them. I know Kuka shared that they don't look at them, but some schools do, right? And I encourage students, excuse me, if they are going to submit them, they're coming from appropriate places, and wherever it might be. That's really a good way to make sure that they stand out. What do I wish I saw more of in applications? Authenticity. I think students are very surface level in their communication with us. Sometimes too much surface level, and sometimes too in depth, right? So I think authentic and real. One of the things I do a lot of when a student writes me an email, and I'll be transparent with this, and they call me Mr. Rothstein, the first thing I say to them is like, "That's my dad. Thanks so much, and that's really nice, and I'll let him know you said hi. But let's talk, right? I'm a human, and I try to bring as much humanistic belief and realism in my communication with students, whatever that might be, and I think that's really a big thing."
Okay. I'm going to keep, because it's almost 2, I want to respect everyone's time. Mari, do you want to pick a couple to answer here?
Yes. I think I'll take the first one. We are a liberal arts and sciences college, and so we don't admit students to specific majors or specific areas of study. And in fact, we think that students will probably change their major a variety of times. We have like a little major breakdown, and it shows how students came in and what they ended up declaring, and then what they thought they were going to declare and what they graduated as. And the lines are all over the place. All that to say, we want 17, 18-year-olds to be exploring what their interests are. I'm in my 30s and I say I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life, but that's not true because I love what I do. And this is probably, so long as I can still recruit international students, this is probably what I'll do for the rest of my life. And so I just think that like what the liberal arts promotes is lifelong learning, and we want our students to also show that. And so if there are students who have academic interests that have pursued research in them, let's say they really love economics, I have a lot of questions for them as a 17-year-old and why they love economics, but I will let them explore that. And if they have had internships or they've been able to shadow a family member or whatever it is, certainly that's impressive and they should indicate that. But we also want to see them being a teenager and like not just doing internships and research and things that they think we want to see. We want to see that they're doing things that they enjoy as well. And college isn't just about the academic component of it. It's about growing as a human being within your hard and soft skills. And we really want to see that you are going to embrace our community, especially for a place like Colgate, where we're in a more rural location and it's a very intense campus, very intentional campus community as well, where students pursue a lot of different extracurricular activities. We want to know that they're able to get out of their comfort zones a little bit more. We're telling students that if they want to pursue new activities, they certainly can. what we don't want to see, and I don't think this is news to anybody on this call right now. Don't go and join a club for a week and then put it on your resume because you think we want to see that you've done 27 different things. We'd rather see that you've done 7 things very intentionally and maybe tried 3 other things a little bit more, but really found your passion within them. So there's certainly nothing wrong with trying out a whole bunch of different activities to find out what you enjoy. I don't even want to say passion for because it's hard to find passion when you're 17, and in your 30s also, spoiler. But I do think that it's important for students to explore what their interests are. And if they've done something for a week and not enjoyed it, don't put it on your application because it doesn't tell us about who you are.
And then Kuka, do you want to answer one? I know we're coming up on two. If we could spend maybe another 15 minutes doing questions, it would be awesome, but then we'll cut it. And like I said, I am recording it, so if someone has to jump off, but Kuka, could you answer the third one about these pay to play opportunities, how you view those? And then I'm gonna move to the next slide so that Brian, Mari, and Michaela can start thinking. But what do you think about the pay to play? And then maybe you could answer one more as well, Kuka.
I think it all comes down to what did they gain from the experience. So if they're paying for, and the University of California has multiple summer programs, our research mentorship program, our Cosmos program that have an intentional lens, right? I went to the medical conference that UCLA hosted for high school students on the pre-med track, and you pay to attend them. It Okay, fine, you paid for them, but what did you gain out of the experience? There are plenty of things that are free that a student can show and can learn from that are equal in value. So the paying isn't necessarily something that is going to change my perception of the accomplishment. In fact, it just goes, okay, well, you had the income, you chose to pay for that experience. Awesome. Tell me what you gained. And so it's not a detriment to a student or an applicant. It doesn't necessarily make it better, though. And so think about the word context once again. I'm reading an applicant who has a high income. They have a lot of opportunity. They chose to do an education abroad summer that was massively expensive. They used the context of their ability. Great. I'm not going to hold it against them. But I want to know, what did they gain from the experience? Why did they choose that experience? And if those answers aren't there, then the program itself isn't more valuable just because they had to pay for it.
Okay. Thank you. Michaela, I feel like we've covered these and I want to get through as many as possible, but Michaela, would you mind addressing number 4, mentioning mental health and essay, health?
Yeah, that was the one that I was hoping to answer. So great.
Okay,
I'm glad
good.
we
And I'm
landed
gonna,
on
like I said,
that.
I'm gonna advance the slides so your colleagues can see and start thinking, but go ahead and address mental health if you can.
Yeah, so we definitely see a lot of this. I feel like especially during and just after COVID, we saw a lot of essays basically talking about like I was not okay during junior year. That is why my grades went down or something along those lines, or just telling us about a mental health issue that you have struggled with, because unfortunately, that's very common. So sometimes your essay can be a good place to talk about that, especially if it was something that happened previously and you have gotten treatment and you have gotten help and you are doing better and there is an upswing and there's a positive end to your story and you are using that to help us understand the context of who you are, maybe also understand the context of some poor sophomore year grades, but there's an upswing at the end, it ends on a positive note, and there's a way for you to write the essay that way. If that is the case, great. Your essay can be a good place to talk about that. You don't have to, but your essay can work. If that is not the case, there are definitely good ways to tell us about that. Your additional information section is where that should go. If there's not a positive upswing at the end, if it's just context that we just need to have, like we have had students write about, I was really not doing mentally okay during junior year because my mother died. So like, obviously you weren't doing okay during junior year. And obviously that impacted your academics, and it is information that we should have about your application. But I do not want you to put a silver lining on that. I don't expect you to. You shouldn't. That should not go in your essay. That can go in your additional information section, which we will still read. We will still get that context. And you don't have to worry about putting a silver lining on it, phrasing it in the right way, making it an interesting story. You can just tell us that this bad thing happened and that we should know that as we are looking over your application. So any kind of hardship or especially mental health struggles, absolutely feel free to share that with us. We're never going to hold that against you, but I think there are more and less helpful ways to share that information with us.
Awesome. Let's go to like Brian, if you could answer any one of these, and Mari, Kuka, and Michaela, if you want to drop in the chat any additional notes, if people are looking at that. But Brian, we just picked the most important one, you think?
Actually, I'm going to summarize them, and I hope that makes it life a little bit
Yes, go
easier.
for it.
So discussing students' passion beyond the classroom, is it okay to say engineering, they want to major in whatever it is because it's their passion? Sure. But I think we kind of touched upon this before, right? Like we want to know about them. That's a little bit of a surface level piece of it. Like if why do they want to be an engineer? I think Kuka shared this before. Like what is the passion? Like what are we trying to learn about them as an individual? And Michaela shared this before, like saying that they want to be an engineer because their grandma's an engineer is fantastic, but I'm not admitting their grandma to college. So that's not going to be super helpful to us. So we want to learn about them and characteristics of some of our favorite essays. At least I'll share some of mine. I want a vision that they're, and I say this to students too, I want a vision that you're sitting in front of me and telling me this story, right? Like I want to hear your voice reading this to me. And if it's not your authentic voice or it's not who you are or what you're trying to share with me, I'm not going to hear it that way, right? Like, so I am a very visionary person. I want to envision you sitting in front of me. And I say to students when I meet them, we may meet today and we may never meet again. So when I'm reading your essay, I want to pretend like I met Susie sitting in front of me and reading this back to me, and this is how it should be. So I really think that that's an important thing. Good topics to include in an additional information. I say I think it depends, right? Like, they should share information. Do I think they should overshare? Yes and no. I mean, Michaela just shared about the mental health piece of it. I think that that's an important piece to share with us. But I also understand when students sometimes are reluctant to share certain information with us. There is a point of sharing and a point of oversharing. So I think it's a fine line. And I think if a student is not sure, they can reach out to the admission office and we can be pretty transparent with them about what they should be sharing. But definitely making sure that we're familiar. Too polished. We answered this question before. The AI versus, an essay writer, or someone who's assisting. I think there's a pretty fine line there, but they can definitely help with that. And supplemental essays in regards to like DEI and things like that, they're important. I think we kind of touched upon this in the last couple of sections of kind of where, what, and who. So I think you kind of got an answer to that.
Yeah. And I think Kuka also put something in the chat. Mari, let's move to you. Take a look at this, answer whatever you think the most important is. We're just going to kind of try to move through as quickly as possible. And and pick any or all or whatever it is. And as you finish, I'm going to advance it so Kuka can see the next one.
Yeah, I think we talked about okay to abbreviate to save space. Absolutely, we don't need full sentences. We just want to know what you're doing. I don't, I anything that offends you is a real turnoff. Like, I think the obvious things, like maybe don't, probably not going to give examples for that, but like just be cognizant as a teenager what you're doing, what you want the college to see, and what citizen you're going to be on our campuses. And then I think I'll just finish by saying like there's sort of a value in ranking things, but also not, because I get students a lot that are like, but I created my own nonprofit, and then I also am the president of speech and debate, and I also went on this service trip, and these are all equally important to me. So I've personally sort of gone away from looking at things from 1 through 5. I think if you put it in spot 10, I'm gonna be like, okay, that's probably like the thing that you maybe care about the least. I don't think you care about 10 things equally. But I do think there's power in just understanding that not all 10 spots on the Common App have to be filled up if that's not something that you've done. It goes back to the beginning of our conversation. Everything that you've done is important, including family responsibilities, part-time work, volunteer work. I often have students who will say, I don't have extracurricular activities because I have a job, to which I respond, you have extracurricular activities. In fact, you're doing that 25 hours a week to help support your family. And that's incredibly powerful and important, and also giving you a lot of skills in that sense. And so there's not like one thing we want to see. And we're not taking it against students when they're not able to join after school club practice, or they are not able to do the swim team because that meets before school and they have to be responsible for getting their younger siblings off to the bus. And so everything is contextually important. And if there are activities that feel like they need a little bit more justification, additional information is always a place to expand upon that a little bit more. And I believe Common App this year has added another section of the additional information and specified a little bit more what can be included in what place. If students feel like they have to explain things even more, they can always email us as human beings as well.
Thank you. Okay, Kuka, if you want to take us over the finish
Sure.
line.
I'll say this. The application is going to be read 100% from cover to cover of what is available to us. If you know that the state of California abides by Proposition 209, so we don't see race, ethnicity, gender. We haven't seen that for 25 plus years. So not a big deal for us. And Santa Barbara's campus actually redacts your student's name. So I can't make assumptions about them because when you read Refugia Acosta, you're like, she's Latina, and you'd be right. I am. And so we remove that particular facet. But if things come into play, right? If culture impacted, let's talk about politics right now, right? Someone looks at my face and it impacts how my teacher's talking to me, how my friends are talking to me, then it needs to go in the application because it's changing their ability to be a student, right? If we're looking at the application, we read everything. And your student is paying me money to read their application, and I'm not going to skim through it. Now, I repeat, one and done. I'm not going to go over it over and over again to understand what they're saying. So that's upon your student to be clear and concise. When it comes to a student that I'm like, oh, their GPA is a 2.9, I will still read their application because we don't know if they put the wrong classes in twice. They had a repeat that didn't get corrected. So now they're really eligible. So yes, we read every student. That is our due diligence piece. What's important to us? I will say the University of California does not have a hierarchy. It's not like, oh, there's 20% is based on this part of the application and 40% is based off of that. I will say this clearly. Holistic, comprehensive admission means we're reading it from cover to cover, trying to understand your student, which makes your job harder because there is no one thing that will be the reason why they get admitted. There is no one thing that's the reason why they are denied. And so I thank you in advance for working with those students who don't get admitted because there is no why behind it. They did everything right. It just comes down to space. So when it comes to the application, it is about filling out every question we ask. It is about being true and authentic. And as a student and or you are helping your student go through the application, are there gaps? Are there questions? And if there are, oh, you have to explain that your high school has magnets and academies and you picked the wrong one and you had to transfer. You have to explain that your high school had, changed from semester to year-long grades and that impacted your average. You have to explain that you actually live an hour away from your high school and that changed the activities and awards you had access to. That's where you as counselors come in because we won't know that. And that's what goes in the additional information section, unless they're putting it into a PIQ. So I thank you in advance for helping your student understand what's missing in their application, because as UCSB, I can't ask them. I don't have interviews. I don't have letters of rec. So you being able to fill in those blanks as a sentence or two as an additional information piece, being able to describe that activity better for the stranger reading it, because I don't know what Mesa means in Texas. It's different from what Mesa means as an activity in Southern California, and I won't look it up. And I answer the last one about challenges and circumstances. I will read every challenge. And if it's 500 students that I've read this year who all tell me about the same thing, about challenges of living in an overwhelmingly social media consumed political climate, I will read all 500 and I will read them individually because each of your students is individual. I will read them with the idea of how did this impact you? What did this mean to you? And if your student can answer that, I will value it in their application holistically. So I thank you in advance for being that starting point of the application process and hopefully helping your student bring in a solid, complete application to the University of California.
Amazing. Someone did ask in the chat, is the name being suppressed across all UC campuses on the application?
That is a Santa Barbara. There's a handful of campuses that redact the name, but not all 9.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, I think we're going to move to there were so many good questions, and I'm sorry, but just to respect everyone's time, what I'm going to do is I asked our amazing panelists for the best contact information. And again, I will be sharing a recording of this and I'll send this out and some follow-up to anyone who signed up. I want to thank each of you, Kuka, Mari, Brian, and Michaela. This has been amazing. I cannot thank you enough. You help us do our jobs better and help these fabulous students shine like rock stars. And We appreciate you so much, and we appreciate you spending an hour and 15 minutes with us. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and I'll hang on for a few minutes in case anyone wants to ask me anything. But thank you so much. And thanks to all the IECs who joined and student affiliate members who joined us today. This has been amazing, and really enjoyed it. So let me stop the recording.